I want to show you a couple of methods that I use at the workbench for sawing, and it's something that we commonly use. Sometimes you get small pieces of wood and they're awkward to hold with your hands on a sawhorse. You can't get your knee on it on a sawhorse, you get slippage and it affects the safety that you feel you need. And then there are questions of accuracy and material waste. Those kinds of things really impact you when you're working. I want to show you how we would normally do it at the bench, working with our material. And the advantage to these methods is that you have safety of your work, safety of materials, you've got solidity in holding, and that leads to greater accuracy. So the presentation of the saw is easy to manipulate when you're working with it. So I want to show you two ways. I've got a rip saw here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rip down this board one way, this way. I've set a gauge here which is standard. This has already been trued and straight. I'm going to go just down half the length of this board. So I would typically, because I've squared this edge to this face, I would run gauge lines here. This has got a saw kerf in here that shouldn't be there, but it'll still work. And then I come down half this way. So I'm going to rip down here so that you can see the method that I use. I go in the vise this way. It gives me very great solidity, and then I drop this down here just for the start of my saw. I'm going to cut on this waist side here. So I start the saw just off my line, about 1 millimeter away from my line. My thumb goes up against the side of the saw plate and I engage the saw the full width, just like this. Now I no longer have to think about whether I'm square across. The only thing I have to do now is in the first 10 strokes I need to determine the course of the saw. So here I'm working parallel to my line, and I'll show you what I mean by parallel. There's my line. I'm working down this line. I'm working down on this side. I can see it. I leave that little bit on, and I can use the hand plane then to true up the surface when I'm done. So now my main focus is just on ripping and rip cutting. So I brought it way up in the vise. I put my hand here, I pull against the wood to counter the pressure from my hands, from my sawing hand, and then I saw down parallel to the line, just like this. Correct the saw as it goes, and that's how I would rip cut a piece of wood. When it comes to thicker stock here, so I've just trimmed off some thin stock, but if I wanted to cut through thicker stock, this is what I would do. This is a different method. So that's the rip cut for thin stock. I want to take 1/4 of an inch off here, so I've set a gauge to 1/4 of an inch, like this. I go onto the end as well, like this. Now this might be that I want to split this board in two and use both sides. If that was the case, I would run my gauge on this side as well, like this, and I would run my saw in between, and then I would plane down to the final width. In this case, I'm just going to rip to one of the gauge lines, like this. So I've run my gauge line. Watch what happens here. I go into the vise with my piece of wood perpendicular, and I want to keep this piece of wood in its full width. So I'm taking out this midsection. So I want to cut again on this side. I'm going to cut 1 to 2 millimeters on the waste wood. So I've put my thumb against the side of the saw here, drop my plates, the saw plate against the wood and against the thumb. And then I work across the piece of wood. Now this is a little aggressive here because we generally don't saw square across like this. Once you're into the wood, can you see my line here? This is my this is my knife or gauge line here. So I'm just 1 millimeter over. So once I'm in, I don't have to worry. This is where the saw is optimized. Once you've gone into your material this way, you can start just with every stroke, drop your hand, keep dropping your hand like this. And this is where the saw really works well, and this is where it works well when you're working on two sawhorses too. Check this side. See, I haven't really impacted this side at all. This side I've gone down 2 inches. I flip over, and I'm going to tell you what I do in a minute. I flip over, drop my saw into the kerf again, and I work down the cut line. What I do is I make sure that I count 10 strokes every time I go from here on. Watch this now. I'm going back in the cut because here I'm only down this far and here I'm only down this far. So I'm really square across inside the cut, basically. So now I come down here, I'm going to count 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm staying on my line. I flip over and I do the same, cutting on the waist side of the line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Can you see my cut line? Here is the gauge line is fully engaged. It's still on the good piece of wood. Same on this side. So now I go down this side, and my plate now is governing a lot of this direction, which is wonderful. 10. I go down 10 strokes, flip over, and you can be legalistic. 9 or 11 strokes won't make much difference. It's not much trouble to do it this way. This is a 22-pound saw. And I've kept my line the whole time. And because I can see the line, it means that I have an excess of wood that can be readily planed down, and I'm only going to plane 1 millimeter off this. And we are down way past halfway now, and I will show you. And I've run out of gauge line because I wasn't planning on going all the way through. Let's cut this in two and look at the saw kerf and see what we ended up with. There you go, Phil. Just close in on that and see how clean that cut is. You see that is a very good cut. That's as good as I would normally expect on a bandsaw. It's not much off from a table saw. Same on this one, nice clean cuts. If I took this and put this in the vise like this and take my hand plane, you'll see how little work this took to get this piece of wood to a smooth finish. Perfectly adequate. That's a great way to do it. It's very inexpensive, and it means you get the body exercise and you get your wood thickness and you don't have any issues. It's very simple. Thank you for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. Thank you.